we were all cool, we was friends. I went to like a multiracial school. And then one day randomly, she came to me and said, oh, my mum said I shouldn't be friends with people like you. And then I told the teacher, and then obviously she got in trouble. But ultimately she was being racist. Obviously at the time I didn't know she was being racist, but she literally said that to me. But then funny enough, like, now she's really into black culture. So like it's the maddest quiz. But the next one is actually something that really made it apparent to me. Is one, well, like I said, I used to do music when I was younger, and the age group I was in was like the grime days when you like go to different areas and do like sets and stuff. And I was coming back from, I think, East London. I was on the DLR, and it stopped at Bromley by Bow. And then randomly, like, I didn't know they were police at the time. So randomly, two like white men came on, and they just started saying, it's you, it's you. Then obviously I've got on my seat, and I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Next thing you know, I'm on the floor, kind of thing. And like people are screaming on the really, I should have called conversation. I just couldn't be asked. But like, literally, there was like, people were screaming saying, he hasn't done anything, he hasn't done anything. Yeah? And they're literally like, they've thrown me on the floor. Someone's like stopped the train. And yeah, the next thing I remember is I'm on the platform, but I'm still on the floor. And then I remember one of them being on me saying, you need to stop moving, you need to stop moving. But the part I missed out is I was with my white friend called Kremsy Krem. Again, sorry if you're watching. But I was with my friend, and he was sitting opposite. Nothing happened to him, like nothing, like zero. But literally, they've, like taken me off, and then they said, I matched the description of someone that ran away from something, that just jumped on the train. And then they left me on the platform and then just ran away. I said I didn't get no nothing. And then, you know what's so interesting that now even talk about it, it's like my friend who I was with was telling me I should report it. And I fully remember saying to him, nothing's gonna happen. Like I genuinely knew like there was no point me no point me even going anywhere to do anything like. But they literally they basically attacked me like two grown men. Like obviously you can see I'm getting a bit worked up thinking about it, because it's actually kind of crazy when you actually talk about it as an adult. And then that was it. Like I didn't hear nothing. That no one done nothing about it, kind of thing. So I think that was the one time I was like, you know what? Yeah, like feds are crazy. Like they actually can just do that and get away with it. Fine.
Can I just jump in? Sorry, Heather, because I think also what's really powerful about that is how you ended in terms of there's no point doing anything, there's no point reporting. So it isn't just this violation of your space and your body and this kind of misrepresentation, that there's confusion, but it also feels like this learning of a different justice system. You know, so there are layers. There's one that is the one that we're told exists within society, but then there's the one for us. And in that moment, there's a learning of that as well.
Heather?
When I was thinking about this, I started laughing. It's so funny how sometimes we laugh about trauma, like that's like a weird coping mechanism. It's again in school. I remember I was very chatty, but everybody was very chatty. And this woman, my English teacher, always sent me out. And I remember one day, my friend Sarah, she's a Maltese girl, I was like, I'm not even going to say anything, and Miss is going to send me out. So I came in the class, and I went, she's like, Heather, get out! And I was like, I hadn't even said anything, laughing. And I was just like, she's actually a bully, like this woman is a bully. And I remember it was the same day she did that, there was a book called Anthology, and she read this book called, read this poem called Half Caste. I remember she did it in, white woman, yeah, and I remember she did it in like some mad accent, like, yeah, it was so
did
wild.
She do that?
Yeah, it was very, very wild. And I think there is a derogatory term in there. There is, isn't there? Yeah, and I remember, I feel like a part of me was just like, something about you I don't like, and she could clock that, so she always sent me out. This is English literature, right? And she always used to ask me to read it, and I struggled. And the reason I struggled because I had undiagnosed dyslexia, and I didn't know I was dyslexic until my last year of university. I remember in school, certain people were like, maybe you should take the dyslexia test, maybe you should take the dyslexia test. But for me, she just said, Heather, like, that's not what it years, and it's mad that for a long period of time, I just thought I was stupid. Like, why am I not academic? Literally, the last week of my university degree, 4 years, I did a dyslexia test, and they're like, you're heavily dyslexic, Heather. I don't know how you've been doing it. I remember I was crying, and I was like, it's because that English teacher, you know, I thought I'm stupid. Like, I'm not good at, I'm not academic. These times I've done a master's now, like I was gonna do a PhD, but if it wasn't for that teacher, it does make you feel like some of my choices and decisions were skewed because of what she told me. So kind of like the ramifications of when someone damages you, it can be really long lasting if you don't unpack it.
Thank you all for sharing, because I know to some degree it's not even the easiest thing when you're sharing something and then you're reminded of it, and then all of that kind of is surging through the body almost. And in thinking about the black body and thinking about how much is absorbed, which I'm going to get into in a bit, and again, just to the name Nifia, like I said, it was something that I wanted to create as a term that I wanted, because I'm not sure folks are aware of another term called Repetomania, if I'm pronouncing it right. So at one point, there was an actual term for enslaved Africans who wanted to escape, and this was a term, and they said it was a mental illness to want to escape, and so this term was created, and I was like, hold on, what? I'm like, if you can come up with a term for something this mad, then I can do my research to explain a feeling that I can't put words to, so to speak. And in looking at the different, I looked at different kind of terms, as in weathering. I looked at all of these, done so much research in terms of how much can be held within the black body when we kind of consider lockdown, when we consider George Floyd and everything that came with, and just to kind of lean on you a bit, Professor Rollock, and thinking about on an academic level, in terms of your research, what is it that you know of the black body in terms of the work that you've done that you can be able to share with myself, with everybody in this space, and you know, was there any key things that kind of sparked to you in terms of in the work that you've done up till now?
So I want to take the question slightly more broadly to think about the work that colleagues have also done in the States, because I think we exist in the UK in a permanent state of denial at a broader political level. And I think there's something inherently maddening that makes us mad. And I don't just mean in terms of mental health statistics, I mean in terms of the perversity of living within a space where you're told that your experiences aren't real, where you're told that racism doesn't exist. You're living in the cusp of craziness. And so in that context, is it possible to survive? Is it possible to have a healthy existence? And actually, I question that. I don't know that it is. I think that what we are doing for the most part is navigating, is strategizing. I think we're constantly in that state of alert that I referred to earlier. One of my colleagues at the University of Utah in the States talks about the idea of racial battle fatigue, William A. Smith, and he draws on the analogy of the wounds that are inflicted on you when you're at war, when you're in war. And I think it's a very powerful, very apt analogy, because I feel that whether or not we're laughing and smiling, that actually we are generally at war. We're generally fighting to get promotion, we're overlooked, or we're fighting to be heard at the doctor and for our experiences and pain to be taken seriously. Black women, I'm one of them, who are suffering from fibroids, and we know that fibroids are largely fueled by cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So I think there's a literature, there's research out there, but I think the amount of research in the UK is relatively small. And I say this with some, what is the expression, skin in the game, as it were, as an academic, because if I write a proposal, so I'm really interested in this subject area, and I'm really interested in what are the things we do. I'm not necessarily interested in identifying racism because I'm very clear that it exists. I don't need to do any research on that. And we've got lots of research and lots of studies. But I'm more interested in, given the lay of the land, how do we cope? How do we survive? So how do we find an existence where we don't have to say to our children or think about how to frame that talk to our child? When do you have it? When do you talk to them about the police, or how to be careful at school, how to conduct and carry yourself? And that's an additional labour that is invisible at the moment within mainstream society, which for me is deeply, deeply unjust. And so I'm interested in and very keen to understand how we survive, what are the strategies we use, and for there to be some more systematic way of sharing those strategies with each other. I'm sure there are many people in this room who, after a really horrible or difficult or traumatic day at work, have called a friend or a partner and told them what they've gone through. And we have those conversations, but we have them in our friendship groups, whereas I think that there's learning and advice that we could share with each other, rather than keep reinventing this wheel of explanation, of trying to find solutions. So it's a very long and broad answer, but I think that our starting point has to be, and I think some of us are in denial about it, yes, racism exists, and no matter what they drag out for Black History Month, or whatever they do, whatever new initiative there is, actually it will continue to exist. Therefore, and I know that a Voice survey came out recently and said that I think it's a third of Black people are looking to leave the UK. But for those of us who are living here and making our lives here, how do we find an existence that is healthy, that is whole, where we don't have to both literally and metaphorically keep looking over our shoulders?
If you want to come to that, you can answer that. Absorption, the absorbing of trauma. I remember I was at work one time and there was a book to the side of me, and a colleague comes, and the assumption was that book, because it was a booker winning book, that book didn't belong to me. It was with the next person sat next to me type thing. And then they mentioned, just kind of call out, she just poked at the colleagues like, oh, you reading this book? The colleague's like, what book? She's like, oh, this book. She's like, my book. And then she then looks to me, because I'm waiting for it. And that's the thing. You know it's coming. You just know it's coming. And then she's like, oh, it's your book. And I'm like, yeah. And then she's like, oh, I didn't think. And then at that point, I was like, hey, you see the language. I love that. Because everyone knows the language is happening. Because she was like, oh, I didn't think. And I'm like, what didn't you think? Because the idea is normally I would absorb what was about to happen. I would let her say what she was going to say. And then, because I'm in a work capacity, I'm aware that I'm like one of very few Black men in this workspace. I'm aware that the way I respond to her, my tone might send this somewhere different. So immediately it silences me all the way. But then come the point, I'm just like, nah, fam, enough is enough. You're not about to mess up my situation, especially after lunch. Are you back? Are you actually back? My lunch was decent, and now you're about to come with your foolishness. Nah. So when she said, I didn't think it was, and I said, what did you think? And then she went red face. I'm like, yeah, turn tomato real quick, innit? Turn red face. Because then it's back on her. I batted it right back. And I'm sitting down. And I just carried on my work. And then she know what to do. A colleague looked at her, laughed, looked at me, laughed. We knew what that language was. And she was left to deal with what she was about to send my way. And what I'm sure people in the audience, and I'm sure what we have done in the past, have just absorbed. And then, because then what would happen was, if I absorbed that, she just walks back to doing what she's doing. And I'm left with that. From what we're talking, 12:30 in the afternoon. Left with the rest of the day to deal with that kind of unsolicited violence. So when we're talking about like, I want to go here in terms of the absorption, and you work in a field where you're speaking with the Adidas's, you're speaking with the Nike folks, you're speaking with this person, big Natural History Museum, big gala business. How much absorbing have you had to deal with through time in terms of people just thinking, do you know what you're doing? Like, I don't know if, do you know, I don't know if like,
No.
do you know what I mean?
I think more when we first started, I think I have the benefit of obviously being in my position, so it being like I run my own business, that's number one, and my personality type too. So my personality type is quite direct and quite straight to the point, but then I also run my own business. So when I am speaking to individuals and like other parties, there's not a hierarchy where someone's talking down to me because I have to listen to you, or if you understand, it's more of on a level. So it's not even if you're a client, you're coming to me for my expertise in a certain thing. So it's never going to be a time where you can talk down on me because I don't need this. If that makes sense. So there's actually been recently, in the last, in a couple, how long ago was it? I don't want to say the client, but it was like 4 months ago. We was in a meeting, and basically we had an event, and someone that doesn't usually work with us was involved, and he said that he heard something while we was doing the event, and then he went off to go and tell the rest of the team. But obviously the team know us, so they know that wouldn't have happened. But then he came onto the call and said to me, Ibrahim, you said this. Like basically lying about me. Then I said, no, I didn't. I basically like giggled like what? Like a immediate reaction, like no, I didn't. Then he literally had he basically had the reaction as if no one in his company is allowed to tell him no. So like he's not used to being challenged. Yeah, he had a reaction as if he's not used to be challenged. But I don't work for the client. I don't work at your company. So when I've done that now, he like on God, he literally like said, if this is the reaction you're gonna have, then I'm gonna get off the phone. Then he basically cut the call, as in he left the call, kind of thing. And everyone was just like, what? Like what just happened? Then I've actually had to question the client, like, if we done that, would that be appropriate? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, would we be able to have a fit like that and it be okay? But again, because of my position outside rather than inside out, I can, because if we're saying it's a partnership, it shouldn't be you shouldn't be allowed to do things to me, that thingy. So I literally just questioned them, and they all knew that it was wrong, innit? So we had meetings with his boss, and he apologized to us on his behalf, kind of thing. So, and to this, literally, even when he had that reaction, I've emailed him like, I don't want you to get the wrong end of the stick. Like, let's talk about it. To this day, he hasn't responded, but his whole team has like spoke to us because they know like he's moving crazy. But to this day, he hasn't said sorry.
I would like to just move because I'm mindful of time, and I'm trying to get as much juice for bubbling brains. Coping mechanisms. So we're going through all of this. Coping mechanisms is really interesting for me because I don't know if everyone's watched Dreaming Whilst Black, the most recent season. Oh, wicked, sick. The name of the lady in the office space is trying to move to a high position. I forget her name, someone remind me, I'm bad with names. So there's a lady that's trying to move to a high position, and of course she's overseen and someone else comes in, and of course she can do work way better than the person who's been pulled in. But what she's been faced with on countless occasions is just absolute disrespect, to a point where you're just swallowing it all and your coping mechanisms, because if you challenge the situation, it could cost you your job and what you're actually aiming for to kind of get to the top. I don't know where everyone else is in their profession or what they're doing at the moment, but the idea of fight or flight in versus the whole thing of internalizing is an interesting thing for me, especially in my field where I know this person is doing this specific thing, but I know if my anxiety is if I challenge it, it might cost me this, or I might be blacklisted here, or this might happen to me here. And so I'm in a way better place now. But on the come up, I was in a different position where I'm thinking, I really don't want to mess this up. But me not wanting to mess this up, I'm taking in so much disrespect. Coping mechanisms, fight or flight. Where do you sit? Where do you, Heather, do you want to talk before Professor Rollock? Just fight or flight, where do you sit with that at the moment now?
Fight or flight. I think if you internalize things, I internalize things historically all the time, it has long-lasting effects, right? It's like allowing yourself to be in a bad relationship, and then the bad relationship only lasts for a year, but for the next 10 years you are still suffering from it. So I realize the more I internalize, the more it eats away at my self-esteem. So I actually cannot internalize anymore. I remember after 2020, everyone and their dog wanted to buy my work because George Floyd and and I was like, no, like, in October I charge more because it's Black History Month. Like, I just have like more stronger boundaries, and I think there is a cost to internalizing that won't just be for you, but it'll be a generational thing if you just allow something to kind of eat away at your integrity. So I think if you don't know that there's a cost to it, you'll just be like, oh, I'm just playing the game. But by the end of it, you'll be drained of resources. So there's a cost to not speaking, I think.
Thank you. Professor Rollock?
Yeah, so I don't have a tidy answer because I think we're constantly, every single situation that happens, I think where race could be a factor or is explicitly a factor, I think we're making those deliberations all the time, whether to fight. Do you engage? Do you name? Do you not? And then if you do, how do you? Because there's the stuff that certainly goes through my head that I want to say, how I want to look at people. And then there's actually your professor and, you know, you're representing. And I also work for myself, and that's a deliberate self-care strategy. But I also recognise it as a privilege because it's not something I could have done at the start of my career. But it's an explicit strategy so that I can avoid being inside institutions and all of the politicking that goes on. So I don't think that it's a straightforward either or, fight or flight. I think, and this is part of what mashes us up, that tires us down, tires us out, and also leads to that battle fatigue that we're talking about, and us carrying it in our body, is because we're having to make these deliberations, what I call these micro calculations all the time. It's like, did you just say that? Did you actually just look at the book and ask, what are you going to say? And there's, again, what you want to say, and then you have to kind of dial it down a little bit and find what might be just about palatable so that you can still keep your job. So I think it's difficult, but it's precisely that difficulty that I think causes us headache, causes us grief, and causes, I think it is generational, completely, we don't consider this enough, that it is generational. It's not just with us and then, I know everyone's talking about the youth know the way forward, but I think actually it's perpetuated through generations, because in order to survive in the UK, we have to understand the territory, to draw on the war analogy I used earlier, that lays before us, and what tools or weapons we need in order to navigate that space.
I'm going to go to Q&As. This is my last point, and it's just brief responses if you want to. Over time, there is the idea of trauma, black trauma, not on it. These films, leave it alone. We're done. No more of these films, no more of these situations happen. We don't want to go through the same thing over and over again because it sits in the body and we just don't know what to do with it for the most part. And Ethiopia kind of speaks to the cracking of the shell and the toxins released in the body, and all of these things start happening. My friend who read the poem said to me, is it bad or is it more like an awakening? Is the idea of prevention, would you rather prevent this and not having none of this, or none of the trauma, none of this happening at all, and be none the wiser? Or, for the most part, is there something in being aware of this that kind of makes you ready for society, what you're living in? I don't have a specific answer for that, but I think that's something to think on in terms of, in some cases, do we rather not necessarily are we not aware of these things are happening, or should we be aware of it in order to know how to kind of push forward in this world that we are living in? And I just want to let that sit with you. I don't know by the time we wrap up if you have anything to share on that, but I just want to give room for Q&As. Anyone, any questions? Any questions online as well? I can't see you, but I know you're about. So online, make it happen. I've now officially closed my one iPad, I've opened others. So, can we go here first, please, if it's possible? Thank you very much. Everyone all right, by the way? Everyone okay? Yes. Yeah? Make some noise for our panel one time. All right, so please, no essays or comments, because we're trying to get through as many as possible. Awesome. When you're ready.
It's just on kind of what you've been speaking about towards the end. I'm studying my master's in social justice and education.
Yeah.
And with regards to the fight and flight thing, I find the more that I'm aware, the more traumatizing it is. Not even just to know, because you see injustice everywhere. Like I want to just go to dinner and
You just want to chill.
You just want to watch a series. I'm watching The Wire with my partner and we're pausing it every 15 minutes because I'm like, you see?
Yo, season 3 is a madness. Sorry.
But just in terms of, I'm finding it difficult to have conversations because I find the disparity between what I know and what the people I'm talking to know is so great that I can't be polite. I can't even have a reasoned conversation because I am so emotional, because it's so far from the understanding that we need to progress. I become so despondent and I lose hope because I'm like, I feel like what people aren't even aware of what they don't know.
Yeah.
So what do you do when I feel like it's have a conversation, there needs to be agreed, a presupposition, like we all know our starting point, but my starting point is completely different to a lot of people, and so I'm feeling like I can't have conversations, and I'm like, I can't give up because it's in my bones, but equally I don't actually know how to navigate these out of particular spaces where I'm with like-minded people, but it's those other people that need to really be having those discussions. So
thank you. And just on that, I'm not sure where you were the day after the Euro 2020 final and the penalties that were missed, but I immediately emailed my work and I told folks, and I went into work and I'm like, don't. Don't. And to the other colleagues as well, don't do it. Because for the majority of black folks that walked into work that next day, they just needed space. And they don't need no one to come to them saying, so what did you think of last night then? Because that's the last thing that we would want. And I don't like to speak in a we, but I was definitely like, I need to take time as I'm easing myself in today, because I don't want to be talking about certain things for what your curiosity. Thank you. Hands up, anyone? Okay.
Wait.
Oh,
You wanted to respond?
do you want to respond?
yeah.
Because you were saying that it didn't feel like a question.
No, it was a question.
No, I did. I said, so how do you navigate?
Oh, sorry.
How do you navigate?
My bad. Talking of things. Final, do your thing.
Well, the creator in me would say, do your part to translate what you know to the general public. I think it's the same with like politics and stuff. I'm sure there's certain people who like really know deep politics, but sometimes most people don't care about that stuff. So there has to be some sort of, they might care about it or might not care about it, but sometimes someone looking like them translating it in a way where they understand can kind of.
I think the problem is everyone thinks they know everything.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know.
I get what I'm a teacher, so
yeah.
but I feel like I talk to people and they can't recognize that
No.
when someone knows more than them about a particular topic, so they don't want to listen to you.
So maybe I'm going one-to-one conversation. No, literally like.
Can I check, are you talking specifically in relation to your masters?
And social justice related issues regarding race, gender, that kind of thing.
Sure. So, I would recommend, in terms of your masters, approaching the university and saying very clearly to them that you know that black students are not well represented at postgraduate study, and the interest of supporting the retention and progression of someone who looks like you, would they make available some funding, because you recognise that this is a particular concern at the moment for that institution. And if you need to kind of support your argument, I would look at maybe their 5-year plan, their strategy, depending on how deep you want to go. But that's one of the things I would do, and perhaps use some of the language from that strategy as part of your argument to see if they will fund some dedicated coaching for you. It doesn't resolve the issue, but it gives you a space to deposit some of the madness that you're hearing. You will also, as a master's student, be expected to do a dissertation. So I would also think carefully about who you want as your tutor. Normally you're assigned a tutor. This also applies to a PhD study. Think very carefully about who you want to supervise you for a PhD, rather than allow the institution to give you somebody. And go with your list of questions. Like, can you speak about race? If you can't speak about, can I say black in this space? Can I say white in this space? Do you know, which theories do you know? So have your questions. So I would think about that, and I'd also look internally and also externally, potentially for an academic, but doesn't necessarily have to be, but someone who understands the master's process and can help give you that insight in terms of how to navigate the space. And it might be that the university can introduce you to alumni who've done masters, who might be able to offer you support in terms of how to get through successfully. It doesn't make the problem go away, but it helps hold on to your sanity and well-being while you get what you want to get.
I think we've got room for like 2 or 3 more. Oh my days, you lot now want to party now, ain't it? This is what's going on. Can I take this one from back? Yes, you've got the mic already, and then there's a mic here. Right.
Keep it short.
Thank you. Just we're trying to get through as much as we can. That's what we can do.
So this question is directed at Professor Nicola Rollock.
One of the things that I think is potentially interesting and useful, I think there's a conversation to be had around the role of sororities and fraternities, so that are historically black. And I think that's interesting. I mean, these are class spaces, right? They're middle class spaces. So we have to acknowledge that. But I'm interested, and I don't have a firm conclusion on this, but I'm interested in the fact that some of those organisations have been organising spaces. They haven't waited for white mainstream society to understand the problem. They've been forced to, in terms of how they've been set up historically, to organise and mobilise themselves. And some of them are very powerful today. And we obviously, as you will know, we have African Americans who've been in politics and other senior positions in the States who are part of those organisations. And I know some of those chapters are over here and coming over here, but I think the piece is here. I think some of us have bought the Kool-Aid and we believe in the idea that progress is possible. And I don't know that all of us have fully understand the collective pain that we're all in. And I would also say as a final point, and so this is already succinct, and obviously there's a lot of meat behind it, but I don't think we're very good here at connecting what we might think of as black working class struggle - poverty and everything that comes with that and the trauma that comes with that, with the idea of being black and middle class. I think there's a kind of separation that happens, but I have lots of thoughts, so I want to leave space. But
Thank you.
Fortunately, we have room for one more question, but we're not going anywhere. We're going to be outside. You can talk to us and all that stuff as well. So, better make it a good one. I'm playing.
Thank you.
Do you think?
I just wanted to come from a different perspective, because when we speak of racism and black experiences, there's something about it that feels inherently anti-white. When I speak to a white person about it, they immediately get awkward. You know, they're immediately more alert and, you know, careful not to say anything wrong. And I think there's an argument that says that, you know, racial studies should also focus on the white experience and the white perspective. What is it about seeing a black man or a black woman that makes you don't want to clutch your back? What is it? How do you break that down so that you don't deny black experiences anymore? It's not awkward. It's not. How do you get past? I guess my question is, what are your views on that, coming from the white perspective and breaking down those boundaries so we can have honest conversations and, yeah, dealing with that rhetoric? Yeah.
Can I lean creatively, Heather? Would you mind in terms of, because I think through art you can explore a lot of these themes potentially, right? So to some of the points raised, how through your art and through your work do you kind of raise these discussions? Does it create more room for discussion, or do you kind of like?
Yeah, I think the project I did, Body Remembers, was about black female experience. The majority of the audience were white. It felt that I think anti-blackness happens in our culture. I can experience anti-blackness. I think everybody experiences anti-blackness, right? So I think the conversation around art can sometimes make it feel less direct or more inclusive, I guess. I think people don't want to offend, but something about art, and even though I don't know, something about art makes it feel, I guess, more accessible, and people don't need to engage in like difficult conversations. They can just hear my perspective, very clear, very black perspective, and have that interaction with the work. I think those it feels like conversations happen more organically when there's room to kind of breathe. And I think sometimes those conversations can make people feel they can't be honest, I guess. Art makes the work ambiguous and allows people to have conversations they'll have later at home rather than be kind of confronted. So that's what I would say. I think that's a roundabout answer.
No, that's fine, thank you. Folks, it's not the easiest topic to get into, and we can speak on this for a long time. But I hope to some degree that it's kind of opened up some room for discussion, some clarity to some degree, and a shared experience to feel like you're not necessarily alone in your thinking or assumptions or feeling. I think a lot of this is in the feeling. Before anything else, please make some noise for our panel. Few things, there were book signings aside, so yes, Professor Rollock, the book is available. Please purchase, and she'll be doing signings. Mannerism, my book is also available. I'll be doing signings. We'll be about. Hope you hang around for the rest of the event and rest of the festival. Happy Black History Month, people. And as locally and as globally, happy Nigeria Independence Day. Folks, my name is Yomi Sode. Thank you very much for being a part of this panel, being a part of this discussion and exploration. Yes, take care.
Yeah.